But you only have 90 centimeters in diameter. How can you do this? Just as simple. As due to the capability of frequency shifting, you can take a big frequency, divide it by, let's say, 500 megahertz, separate it on multiple link stations, in this case, let's say 15 or so, put them in a so-called pool. You all know cloud computing. I think most of you do. It's exactly the same subject. You combine them, and you have, let's say, communication cloud. I always call it link pool. And this pool just receives segmented the frequency with at least one node acting as a backup link. So what do we have right now? If you take the laws of physics, calculating the spectrum and the band you've got here with this combined antennas, you end up with an antenna that's even larger than a 30 diameter antenna that you have in the AGA at the Very Large Array in New Mexico. So this is something pretty cool. So you get a very big antenna distributed, in this example, across America. And it's just very small, on a rooftop, on a building, and you can't even see the difference to a normal satellite dish. No, maybe you can, but it's not the original intention. So, okay, now we have to recall the fact everything is moving, and it's moving pretty fast. In regards of mass, very fast. So we have the problem mass is really hunting down over the Earth with all these communication windows. So one good thing about this approach is you're using the same effect that you have when you cloud computing using about distributed computing power. You have an always standby backup units right in the spot like this one. So if you imagine that mass is moving this side, then this unit is already turning around to mass, setting everything up, pulling into the frequencies, and if this one goes out, it takes over. So you end up with a, and this is very interesting, just go to the next slide and we can go back again. This is something that really took a lot of work, but it looks quite easy. We've got a lot of numbers in here. So we did some number crunching as we started building our prototypes to see what we've come up with this system. So if you do one single link station with a 90 cm diameter antenna could be transmitting more than 50 megabits up and down speed to a satellite in a geostationary orbit. And now comes the interesting part. The geostationary orbit is 36,000 kilometers away from Earth. And the most important thing, it's 24/7. Why is it 24/7? So, as you see, all are 24/7. Our goal is to be placed at least around 100 nodes around Earth. It may sound a lot, but if you think about it, 100 nodes, it would just mean about 2 or 3 nodes in Germany, and it's quite easy to find someone who just takes a satellite dish in his backyard, plugs it into the internet, and it's okay. So it's not quite to name something about this. The energy consumption of the entire system, it does not exceed more than 100 watt. So your computer does use more energy than one of the stations. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, I want to explain why it's 24/7. Just go back. As you see, there's a large number of stations, and this, with rotating principles of the pools, you can see that there's almost an ultimate available link pool on every side of the Earth. So if Mars is rotating around Earth, the link pool is always following Mars. Or more precisely, it's beforehand there. So Mars can just get into the spot, communication can happen, and so on. So it's really is complicated, the technology behind this, because you have to do recalculate all the data packets because you receive them at different times, you have the delays in internet and so on. But we have protocols and ways found to deal with this. So if you need more details in this regard, just ask me. Okay. So back to our number sheet. So one interesting thing for our team, as we are a team participating in the Google Lunar X PRIZE, is this one thing. This is quite normal. We are communicating with planets, yeah, great, okay. But communicating with an object on the surface is something completely different. So we have here the mooncast. This means our rover is standing on the surface of the moon, and we want to transmit data. Our rover has a relatively low energy budget. Current estimations are about, let's say, 60 watt at best. So if you have noon at moon day, you have 60 watt due to the solar energy, not more. Normally, let's calculate with 40 watt. 20 watt is the total energy available at best for the antenna. As you saw on Arne's presentation, the antenna and communication system is one combined unit. This is something really special. It's a self-developed technology in this regard. So, and we have calculated that we can use only, we need 15 link stations, 15 is an important number in this regard, to get 50 megabits down speed, and most important, 500 kilobits megabit up speed, and again, 24/7. This may not be that much that you've got when you consider your VDSL Anschluss or connection or something like this, but it is enough to fulfill the requirements set by the Mooncast. And that's very important. Okay, so let's look at these examples. So if we see Earth to the Moon. Earth to the Moon is quite easy again. It's like the geostationary orbit because the distance isn't that big, because 40,000, 400,000, okay, there is a difference, but it's not that much compared to this number. And if you look at Earth, it's again 50 megabits, but not more, definitely not more. And this is very important. The system, if you calculate 100 link stations on the entire Earth, facing at least half of them to the object you are communicating with, you could end up with a bandwidth from Earth to Mars with 5 megabits by a distance of 130 million kilometers. So why is this important? Currently, NASA has some Mars exploration missions going on, and if I am correctly, they are currently using only about 50 kilobits of their bandwidth to communicate downstream data with Earth. They could use about let's say 1 megabit, but not more currently. That's had to do with the technology they've embedded in on their sending side at the probes. So our goal is to have lower energy requirements on the sending part, so in deep space, but have larger antennas, virtual antennas, not real ones. Because real antennas have limitations. You can't build a 60 diameter antenna. Okay, you can, but you don't have the place for this, and you have to build it all over the surface. So distributing the antenna as a virtual antenna grid around Earth is a quite great option. So you got Earth as one big antenna. Oh, just have to imagine this. Okay. So one thing to note about this is we already have this problem a lot in regards of space communication. For example, with the Apollo moon landing, NASA sent out chips for the coasts to extend the communication window with the crew on the lunar surface to get a full-time video sequence. Otherwise, they had to wait, it was 4 hours to get the next communication window. But they wanted to do a live streaming of this. So they had to manually extend with chips their communication grid. They do not pretty much the same in regards of technology, but of the idea. Yeah, this is currently a project we're working on. We've already developed some prototypes in this regard, and this is very important about this. We're not talking about a simple idea. We have partnered with 2 companies in this regard, which I can't name right now, sorry. And they've agreed to allow us to place more than 100 stations. So they are giving us place at their grounds to place the stations where we have internet and needed maintenance, because if something like a tsunami comes and your dish got rolled over, someone has to pull it up and check it again. So we always need a technician in place. Not all time, but sometimes once a year or so. Yeah, and this is, let's say, our biggest side project for 2010. We want to start with a small node network, like let's say 15 nodes, and see how this works out. Yeah. One thing about this that should be interesting for all of you, due to patent and other things like this, everything we do here will be licensed as Creative Commons completely. So this technology will be available to everyone, because the only way something like this can work is everyone could participate in this. So everyone can decide, I want to put a link station in my garden and want to get a bandwidth share of this network. So you can pull the internet from Earth into space. And this enables to do something pretty cool things in future. So just have to lay the ground for it right now.